Oh, yes, we are live. Thank you so much for tuning into today's live with Gabriel, who is from Brazil and he speaks a ton of languages. So, we're going to do this live in about 25 languages he did not know. No, I'm just kidding, Gabriel. But you guys, I'm so excited. This is an aspiring polyglot's dream to be able to pick the brain of polyglots. So, thank you guys so much for tuning into this live. Please write in the comments where you're watching from. I already see some of my friends, and I know they're from Brazil and Jordan and Italy. So, thank you guys so much for being here, and thank you so much, Gabrielle, for being here too.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
So, you're in Paris right now,
hmm
and you're just hanging out.
Just hanging out.
That's awesome.
It's basically it was always I just love it's one of my favorite cities, and so I moved here in July,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, it's just really it's just so much fun to just like
Yeah.
walk around, and right now it's just like a little bit quieter, of course, because of the
Yes.
current world situation.
Mm-hmm.
But
Do you
go
have a
on.
favorite spot in Paris?
I have a few, but my favorite, like I just love the Notre Dame.
Oh, yes.
But of course, it's now under construction. But I just like
Mm-hmm.
love the little plaza. It's just so beautiful, and
Mm-hmm.
I love Tuileries just because you can actually from Tuileries you can actually see the Louvre. You can see l'Arc de Triomphe. You can see the Eiffel Tower and
Wow.
Sacré-Cœur. You can see everything. It's just such a gorgeous, magical
Mm-hmm.
place.
That's amazing. You're
So I
always
really like it.
posting such beautiful pictures on your
Yes.
Instagram
Oh, thank you.
stories, and I'm like, gotta get there.
Oui, oui.
Yeah. So, in this live, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about who you are, where you grew up, and then, of course, we'll get to language learning questions as well. So, tell me a little bit about yourself, your upbringing.
Sure. So I was born and raised in Brazil, and I essentially aspired to be a businessman. So I just thought I was going to go to business school in Brazil, and I was preparing for that. I went to a private school in Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
I was just a bit of a nerdy kid. I I used to enjoy classical music, and but then I just got into different things, karate and so on. But then I just started learning. I started learning English when I was 10,
Okay.
and my parents put me in an English school in
Mm-hmm.
Brazil, and
Okay.
we would have just two lessons, hour and a half, so 3 hours a week,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
I completed the whole course. So like by the age of 16, I was done the course, and
Wow.
by then I was technically fluent.
Mm-hmm.
Although when I moved to Canada when I was 17, then it was just kind of like, well, it was hard to really it was still hard to communicate a lot of the time, and my
Mm-hmm.
listening comprehension was brutal.
Mm,
So it took me
yeah.
like another year or two to just become really confident with communicating, really well. So it took me like really about 8 years to become very fluent in English.
Okay.
And then I just thought, that I was just not good at languages. I used to think that I was good at math because it was
Mm-hmm.
always, I always did well in math, and
Mm-hmm.
it came more naturally to me.
Yeah.
And so I actually did go to business school, but in Canada at UBC in Vancouver,
Okay.
and I studied finance.
Uh-huh.
And then I thought to myself, as a challenge, I wanted to try to learn French and German at the same time. And
Wow.
then I reached B2 in both of them within 4 years, which is just half the time that it took me to learn English. Then I was
Yeah.
like, oh,
And
hey,
two
now
languages.
in two languages, exactly.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
then I realized, oh, well, I actually enjoy this. I may not be as terrible as I thought I was.
Yeah.
So then I just
Yeah.
kept going. I just started learning
Wow.
Italian and Dutch, and then I just started learning other languages. I started learning Catalan and Afrikaans. I started learning then Russian and Chinese. I fell in love with Russian, and then I just kept going with it. I dabbled in many, many, many languages, but Many of them I just didn't make it past A2. I just
Okay.
kept, but I just kept going with the about 10 languages primarily that I focus more on, and
Wow.
that's it.
Wow. Is that still the case for you today? Do you primarily focus on about 10 languages?
I'm all over the place, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Currently, I'm in the middle of a Japanese learning challenge.
I saw that on your
My
channel.
Yeah, my level is very basic, and but
Okay.
I'm really enjoying it. And
Mm-hmm.
with it's a 30-day challenge, so I am just trying to learn as much Japanese as I can.
Yeah.
But yeah, I got long ways to go to make it to fluency in Japanese. But I'm learning a lot. It's a lot of
Yeah.
fun.
What is your main goal when you learn languages? Like each language, are you like, yeah, I'll let you speak.
I like to get conversational. I like to
Okay.
be able to understand it. But it also depends on the language because, for instance, there are some notable exceptions like Russian.
Mm-hmm.
With Russian, I really wanted to get conversational,
Mm-hmm.
but I also really wanted to read Russian literature
Okay.
because I've always wanted to, I thought, wow, how amazing would it be to read Tolstoy or Dostoevsky or Gogol in Russian? And
Mm-hmm.
but I don't have the same sort of goal for Chinese, for instance, or for Japanese. Like, of course, I'll be someday interested in reading Chinese literature or Japanese literature. I'm more with most languages. I'm more interested in developing a really strong listening comprehension as well
Mm-hmm.
as just the ability to speak, and then
Yes.
later in the long run, just like go deeper into the literature.
Yeah.
But and other, just like writing and
Yeah.
maybe poetry. I don't know.
Yeah, totally. Yes, this will be saved on my YouTube channel. There was that question. If you guys have any questions as well. Oh, there is one. Do you speak Arabic?
Just a tiny little bit. I learned a little bit of I started with the Egyptian,
Okay.
the Egyptian dialect, and then I did 10 hours of Pimsleur for Egyptian. Then I just started looking for other resources,
Mm-hmm.
and then I did maybe 30 hours of the Syrian dialect, basically.
Okay.
And بحكي شوية عربي مو منيح كتير.
That sounds
Just a
amazing to
little bit.
me.
Shukran. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's very
What
very
are the
basic.
languages that you feel like, okay, I speak well, I'm conversational in this language? You mentioned obviously English. Obviously,
Mhm.
Portuguese is your native language. And then what else would you say?
So I would say German, French, Spanish, Italian, Dutch, Russian, Chinese, as well as Catalan and Afrikaans.
Wow.
However, the last two are languages that I get very little exposure to recently. I want to change that. I want to go back to getting more exposure to. So, like,
Yeah.
I still have a good level of understanding,
Mm-hmm.
which to me is just the most important anyway. But to have like a really good conversation in Catalan, I'd probably need a week in Barcelona to just get back into it, and then go for
Yeah. Yeah.
it.
I lived
Those are
in
my best
Barcelona.
languages.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
But I didn't learn
Cool.
Catalan. I was still learning Spanish when we moved
Mm.
there. And so I feel like I learned Spanish pretty well. But it's so interesting because all the signs and everything, like you bring your son to school, all the paperwork, everything's in Catalan, which is surprising, you know?
Yeah.
Really? Yeah.
And they get so happy when you speak Catalan to them,
Oh, I know. I
because
know.
they're just like, oh, like tourists are gonna speak um, Castellano, and
Right.
that's that, right?
Right.
So they get really happy because and of course I'm not into local politics at all. Like, of course, like I'm not a, but
Yeah.
because some people, like, I've had some Spanish people say like, oh, are you a separatist? Do you want them to?
Oh, I
I'm like, no,
know.
I have nothing to do with that. It's,
Yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah.
just appreciate the culture. I
Mm-hmm.
love the Spanish culture. I love
Mm-hmm.
the culture from Catalonia. I love Salvador Dali, the painter.
Oh,
So
yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if you've been to Figueras, which is
The
where he's got
the
the
little
museum.
yeah, the little city. It's not too far from Barcelona.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I didn't go to the museum, but
Okay.
yeah. But I feel like I went to that town. But
Nice.
that's cool. How do you decide what language you're going to study or what language you're going to learn?
Um, I guess it's just based on some. Sometimes it was just about the challenge.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, with the um, I guess German, I thought like I was attracted to the culture. I also wanted to read, for instance, Nietzsche in German. I wanted to
Okay.
read Kafka in German, and I start falling in love with the cultures,
Yeah.
and then I fall in love with the language. Then it just becomes a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
So I, for instance, with Russian, like I was really into like, okay, like this seems like a challenge. This seems really interesting because I want to, like I mentioned before, I wanted to read Dostoevsky in Russian. I
Yeah.
wanted to read Tolstoy, and so that really motivated me.
Mm-hmm.
So, but
Mm-hmm.
there's just always uh, so many languages that I want to learn at all times, which
I
is just
know. I
I want to learn them
know.
all.
Yes. Do you ever just start learning even though you know you probably shouldn't? You should stick with the ones you're learning, but then you just can't help yourself and you just start learning another one.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Like that's why I've dabbled in more than 30 languages because like normally I'll just like start whatever, like for instance, Finnish, like I started like Georgian, like I've dabbled a little bit
Wow.
like in those languages.
Yeah.
But of course, I also like I try to avoid neglecting really the
Mm-hmm.
languages that I speak
Right.
well or relatively well. For instance, like I've read C1 in German.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I've reached C2.
Okay.
Um, but and someday I'll actually put the effort into reaching C2 in German. But
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather, for instance, just not forget some other language that I know, or just like go
Yeah.
deeper into because I think that my Russian's probably around B2. I'd
Okay.
rather I want to strengthen it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Or for Mandarin, I believe I'm like around HSK 5, which is a decent level, but I want to also like become stronger with it. So I'm always
Mm-hmm.
juggling these
Yeah.
languages, right?
Yeah.
So, but I've been neglecting German a little bit for a while, so now it's just there's so much that I. But of course, like the understanding is still there, which is the most
Mm-hmm.
important to me. So it's
Mm-hmm.
just if I were to get a lot of exposure within like 1 week in German,
Mm-hmm.
then I'd be
Mm-hmm.
back to just like full on having no problems with it. But
Yeah. Yeah.
um, it's
That's
crazy.
good. Hi, you guys, just coming into the live. Hi from Spain, Brazil. You guys, welcome. We do
Hello.
have a couple questions. What is the easiest language to learn after learning English? I don't know.
That's a good
It,
question
I know. I don't
because
know.
I think it depends. Like I'll just give, I would say that it's just um, how easy it is or how difficult it is to learn a specific language really boils down to two main things that are more practical than just the actual structure of the language or the
Mm-hmm.
grammar.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just the availability of materials
Mm. Yes.
and how much you're into it.
That's so good.
If you absolutely love the language, it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter if it's Japanese, which is just super, it's quite complex and different.
Yeah.
And of course, like a third factor would be like how distant it is from the language that from your mother tongue or a language that you've mastered.
Totally.
So, for instance, like for a native English speaker to learn Mandarin, it's obviously going to be more. It's going to be harder than Dutch
Yes.
because Dutch is a lot more.
Right.
There's a lot more vocab that's very similar. The structure is
Mm-hmm.
just also Germanic language.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
but ultimately, I think that those two factors are more important in determining it. Because first, if
Yeah.
you don't have any materials available,
Yeah.
it's going to be very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Period. Because
Mm-hmm.
you can't get much exposure to the language. And second, if you love the language, it makes it
Mm-hmm.
easier
Mm-hmm.
to
Totally.
learn it.
Totally. Do you have like what's been your favorite language that you've learned so far? Are there any like top one or two?
Yeah, I love them all, but normally I say that it's Russian
Mm,
because it's
wow. You surprised me with that answer.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I do love Italian. I do love French. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
in different ways.
Yeah.
Italian, I feel like it's really part of me because my grandma was Italian, so it's just like
Okay.
I think that it's in my blood, and I love the culture. I
Mm-hmm.
love the language.
Yeah.
I love the French language too, and English. I love English as well. Like it's
Okay.
just an elegant language. I think it's nice. I like
Okay.
English poetry, like Keats.
Mm-hmm.
I like
Mm-hmm.
Shakespeare even, but
Wow. Okay. You're
the
super into reading. That's cool. I like that.
yeah, but like like often, like really often, like I'll start something, but I won't finish it. Like,
Okay.
but recently just finished the. Um, I read a book by what's his name, Hemingway.
Mm-hmm.
It was just this. I forgot the name of the book, but I'm forgetting things. Basically, he was. It was mostly about him in here in Paris because he lived here in Paris for a while as an expat,
Okay.
and
Okay.
the yeah, and it was really cool. Just to really get some, like an American author, because normally I'll be
Mm-hmm.
reading Russian literature or just like
Yeah.
some random short story
Yeah.
in, I don't know, like French or German or
Mm-hmm.
Italian.
How much time do you spend with your native language, Portuguese?
Well, not a lot, just because, like it would be mostly just me interacting with my students
Okay.
or
Mm-hmm.
my parents, right?
Okay.
Or
Yeah.
maybe my brother too.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that.
Okay. Wow.
So I just feel that I can actually express myself more elegantly in English than
Mm-hmm.
in Portuguese.
That's amazing. That's really cool. I think that can give hope to people that are learning a second language that, wow, you can arrive to the point where you actually feel more comfortable in the second language than your own mother tongue. That's amazing.
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
Wow. So, what language do you think in?
So it just cut a little bit. So if you're,
Okay. Okay.
can you please repeat?
Yes, yes, I'd be happy to. So, what language do you usually think in?
It amazingly it cut again. Could you
Are you
please?
serious? Okay, I'm never
Yes,
asking this
just right.
question again.
Okay.
No.
What was it? Something related to?
It
Uh,
was what language do you think in? What language are you
oh, I
thinking?
see. Okay, okay.
Yes. Okay, it went
So
through. It's meant to
mostly,
be.
yeah, it is exactly third time's
Third time's a
is the charm.
charm.
So it's
Yes.
just, I would say mostly, it really depends because if I'm just like really, really immersed in a specific language, then I'll just like
Mm-hmm.
think more in that language.
Okay.
But it's mostly English because normally if I'm just really mad and something happens, I'll just swear in English.
Okay.
So that's just, like normally, but
Yeah.
sometimes like if I start thinking about something,
Mm-hmm.
um, let's say, like whatever, like if I'm thinking about a conversation that I'm gonna have with my mother, because I communicate with her in Portuguese, I'll
Mm-hmm.
start thinking in Portuguese at that moment,
Yeah.
which is kind of bizarre.
Yeah. That's cool. That's cool
And
though. I like that.
yeah, and sometimes like randomly, like I'll try to think of a word in a specific language, and it will come in a different language. It will come in German for some reason because
Yeah.
it'll just like it's just weird how the brain works.
Yes.
So
Yes. I've had that happen too. What language has frustrated you the most out of
German.
all? Okay, German. And why German?
Because especially initially it was really difficult to understand um, the how the cases worked in the
Mm-hmm.
language,
Mm-hmm.
because you declines the articles and the
Yes.
and the and the pronouns and so on.
Yeah.
So that initially, like, I wouldn't really get the difference between the cases and how to use them properly. For example, like dative is kind of like an indirect pronoun, or I mean,
Mm-hmm.
like an indirect object a lot of the
Mm-hmm.
times,
Mm-hmm.
and accusative is a direct object a lot of the times. So then,
Okay.
what would happen is that initially I didn't know when to use which one, because
Yeah.
like in
Yeah.
Portuguese or in English, like you don't change the words accordingly,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Like basically just the pronouns and so on. So
Yeah.
initially it was just so frustrating to just try to figure it out, and I
Yes.
just thought like, am I ever gonna get this in my head? And
Yes.
then one day it just suddenly like basically clicked, and I was like, okay, oh, oh, okay, this makes sense. So
Yeah.
it took a while.
Wow. Wow. You guys, I see some of your questions. I will get to them. If you guys have questions, please. This is an amazing opportunity we have to be able to talk to Gabriel and learn from him. And one of, actually, I think two of yours were having to do with vocabulary. Like, what are your tips for studying vocab, verbs, things like that?
So I get a lot of exposure to the language, like
Mm-hmm.
an overwhelming amount of exposure to the
Yeah.
language, and that's
Yeah.
critical. Because
Mm-hmm.
then when you're bombarding yourself with vocab, then you're just getting a lot of exposure. You're gonna just learn and retain it faster because
Yeah.
that's the way the brain works. But I also use spaced repetition. I use
Mm-hmm.
a lot of Anki or flashcards to just
Okay.
normally with the straight up sentences.
Mm-hmm.
Nor if I have like a specific word that I want to learn, I
Mm-hmm.
will have 3 or 4 sentences implying that having it in context,
Yeah.
and I'll have a lot of flashcards like that to just like
Mm-hmm.
really internalize
Mm-hmm.
vocab.
That's
And
good.
yeah, and it's fun, because like then you
Yeah.
get to see the word um, in context, like being
Yes.
used, which is
Yes.
critical for really
Yes.
learning.
Totally. I always tell people that because if you just learn a big list of vocab, then you're going to be like, what does this even mean? But if you learn it
Yeah,
in
what a waste of time.
yeah, exactly. But if you're learning it in context, you actually learn it and then you even learn more words because it's a whole
Yeah,
sentence. Yeah,
absolutely. What I
totally.
find really funny too is that in old school books, language books, and
Mhm.
some programs, they will have vocab that is just remarkably useless. Like just basically
Yes.
like, oh, let's learn the body parts on day 3, just like shoulder,
Yeah.
elbow. It's just like, when are you gonna say elbow in a conversation? That's something you
Yeah.
probably there are better things to learn initially.
Yeah. It's so true.
So, or
Mhm.
like bathroom items, like, oh, toothbrush, soap,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
like whatever. It's just
Yeah.
it just always makes me
Yeah.
makes me
It's true.
uh,
Like
laugh.
learn the words that you need for everyday life to talk with people.
Yeah,
Create your own sentences with those vocabulary words, and that will just aid you so much in learning the language. That's really good.
absolutely. Especially because
Yeah.
like a lot of vocab and uh, in this kind of like old school type of program, it's
Mhm.
just they're low frequency words that you're just
Yeah.
not really gonna be using every day. Like for example, like
Mhm.
animals, giraffe. Like
Yeah.
how often do you say giraffe? You know what I mean?
That's
Like
true.
unless you go to the zoo or you work at the zoo,
Yeah, if you work
then
at the zoo, learn your animals.
there
Yes.
exactly.
That's good.
That's
What apps are you using right now, like your day to day, when it comes to language learning?
so I use Anki a lot.
Okay.
I just actually use the site. I don't use the app itself, just because the
Mm-hmm.
site is free. But
Mm-hmm.
I think that like I don't know how much the app costs. I don't need it.
Okay.
And
So the
I
site is
actually,
free. Use the site. Yeah.
yeah, use the site.
Yeah.
And I do always have Duolingo, just because
Yeah.
Duolingo is just it's just fun. It's easy. You
Mm-hmm.
get a lot of
What
sentences.
what's your
You know,
streak?
right now it's just like 23 days,
Okay.
because
Okay.
before I wasn't even using it. I've been using
Oh,
it for
okay.
my Japanese challenge, but then
Okay.
I started reviewing some Polish because I had finished the Polish tree,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
then I was surprised at how much I retained, even though I don't
Yeah.
use Polish.
Okay.
And it's Slavic like Russian, so like that I
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
know decently well. So like there's just some crossover, but it's just not really that close. So
Okay.
I was surprised to see that, like, oh hey, I can actually still remember some Polish stuff.
That's cool. That's
Which is
awesome.
fun.
How much of your language learning is you studying from one language into another that's not your native? Like, how much do you actually study from? Well, let's take out English too, because you're so fluent in English. So, like, do you study, German from Russian or any type of crossover like that?
Yeah, I have a lot of bilingual books,
Mm hmm.
a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
and they're mostly French and another language, or
Okay.
German and with another language. Just because I here in Paris, I can just like find a ton of them.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of books in Russian and French, for instance, which is fantastic because then I can
Yeah.
just just if I don't know something in Russian, I can just check the French translation,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes vice versa. But like I'm stronger with French um, than Russian, so just like normally
Okay.
it's the other way around. So I'm just
Yeah.
like like I'll be like, okay, I don't know this word, and then I can just
Mm-hmm.
like go back and it's a lot of fun because then I have the chance to actually strengthen both of them at once,
Mm-hmm.
which is very nice.
Exactly. Exactly. Right now on Duolingo, I'm doing French, but from Italian. So then I feel like I'm strengthening both languages. So it's good.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
What do you have like the same approach to every new language that you decide to learn?
More or less, yes.
Okay.
There are some elements that are. Oh, I think you froze.
Oh,
Can you
did
hear
I
me?
freeze? I can see and hear you perfect. Am I frozen on your end?
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Maybe it's just it just says. Oh yeah, everything's good. It seems.
Okay,
So
good.
basically, um, what was the question again? I forgot.
So
Sorry, I just got distracted
what is
with the
your
freezing.
approach to language learning? Do you approach every new language the same? Well,
Oh, I
how do you
see.
start? What do you do?
Yeah, so like a bit, the approach is mostly the same, but for example, like it requires some adjustments sometimes. For instance, if there's if it's a different alphabet or there's
Mm-hmm.
just a different writing system. So for example,
Yeah.
like with Japanese,
Mm-hmm.
um, I had to learn, like I really wanted to learn uh, katakana and hiragana, just because there's just two writing systems that are
Okay.
actually based on sounds versus just kanji, which is just basically like Chinese. You need to know like 3,000 of them to just like know what the sound is or what the meaning is.
Yeah.
So I started just learning those two systems that are a bit easier to just like be able to read a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and but then I just started doing exactly what I do with every other language. It will
Mm-hmm.
require some adjustments as well, just because Japanese has some elements that are interesting. For example, like they have like um, different levels of politeness, and that's really important in Japanese. So if
Mm-hmm.
I were to
Mm-hmm.
just say, just learn very informal Portuguese, very informal Japanese,
Uh-huh.
and speak with and talk to, I don't know, an elderly person or in a business setting, that would just like
Mm-hmm.
not sound good at all.
Yeah.
Although that's kind of similar in every language, because
Mm-hmm.
if I'm in New York and I just go to some elderly lady, I'm like, "Yo, what's up?" And she's gonna be like, "Okay, this gentleman
Who
here
are you?
has problems." Like it would be kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
ultimately, yeah, the language really changes quite a bit, and but
Mm-hmm.
I'm just scratching the surface in Japanese. But
Yeah.
the primarily the approach will be virtually the same that it was, for instance, even Dutch or Russian
Mm-hmm.
or Italian. But
Mm-hmm.
with one difference, I guess, though, if the language is just close enough to a language that I already know,
Mm-hmm.
then I will get a lot of aggressive exposure to just more high intermediate or advanced content right away.
Okay.
But that'll be
Where
a bit pointless in Japanese right now, just because I would just
mm-hmm.
not understand pretty much
Yeah.
anything if I do
Yeah.
that. So
Japanese would become your most frustrating language if you did that, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, how much do you do? So, you mentioned reading. How much do you watch things when you're learning? And how much do you write when you're learning a new language?
If I write, I just like, especially initially,
Mm-hmm.
it will just be for review,
Okay.
really, versus just really that's different from my approach. Like when I learned French and German, I did a lot of grammar exercises back then. Like
Mm-hmm.
I used to just do, like for English as well. Like I did a ton of. It was a very traditional system,
Yeah.
but nowadays I really focus more on just exposure, just raw exposure to the
Mm-hmm.
language,
Mm-hmm.
and I try to I get really into things, So sometimes I'll get really into a YouTube channel or
Yeah.
a specific thing. So for instance, like I'm getting into anime in
Mm-hmm.
Japanese,
Mm-hmm.
and it has certain advantages. It has its disadvantages as well.
Yeah.
But if you're really into something like that, it will really help because then you can get a
Totally.
lot of positive exposure to it.
Yeah, absolutely. How soon do you start speaking to natives?
I try to do so right away,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I know that that's yeah, that, like there's a big debate. There's always been a big debate, I guess, in
Yeah.
the language learning community
Mm-hmm.
between that. Like one of my I have a great friend, and I see him as a mentor. That's
Mm-hmm.
Steve Kaufman,
Oh
and
yeah.
he's a big name in the
Yes.
language learning community,
Yes.
and an amazing polyglot for whoever doesn't know him. He
Mm-hmm.
speaks many languages fluently,
Mm-hmm.
and at least back in the day, I don't know if he has changed his mind, but like primarily he used to have really he used to wait quite a bit. He thought, he used to
Mm-hmm.
say like basically he would get months of exposure to the language before he would say even a word
Wow.
to a native speaker.
Mm-hmm.
And personally, I like to, even if I know a single sentence, I
Yeah.
really want to test it. I want
Yeah.
to hear feedback. I want to, I just want to
Yeah.
say it. I just want to see how the person reacts. I want to see if they understood it.
Yeah.
I'll ask for feedback. I'll be just like, oh, can I sound better?
Mm-hmm.
Does my pronunciation suck? Does it not suck?
Yeah. Yeah. Let me know.
Like let me know exactly. So yeah, normally I'm not shy at all when it comes to really doing that. But I think that it also comes down to your personality and your interest. Like, do you want
Yeah.
to engage other people, or do you feel shy? And
Mm-hmm.
if you do feel shy, like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
maybe better to wait.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think that the sooner you start, the better, because then you can
Mm-hmm.
just correct mistakes and
Yes. Your
um,
accent, that's super important, to get a hold of that in the beginning. Oh, Gabrielle, I think you froze on my end. How's
oh
it going?
no,
Oh, nope, you're back.
that's good.
Technology will not let us down
Yeah, I know.
today.
There's one argument in favor of waiting, which
Uh-huh.
is, oh, if you just start really early and you don't know how to pronounce things yet, you don't
Mm-hmm.
know, you're making a lot of mistakes, and you can be basically reinforcing those mistakes by speech. But I
Mm-hmm.
personally find that argument a little bit weak in the sense that, you know, that's what children do. That's how we truly
Yeah.
learn. Children
Yeah.
just talk nonsense. They just repeat things. They don't know. You will know it well, of course, because
Yeah.
you have
Yeah.
you have
Totally.
children, and and you can correct me if I'm wrong. But like
Mm-hmm.
like initially, at least when they're 2 or I guess 2 years old, they're kind of like just
Just starting
trying
to
to say
talk around
stuff.
two.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so they're just
Mm-hmm.
saying things.
Yeah.
Their pronunciation's really it's terrible, right? Like it's just
Mm-hmm.
like it
Mm-hmm.
slowly starts to improve and so on.
Totally.
And then of course, like you as a parent, you're just repeating the words back correctly so that
Mm-hmm.
they can absorb.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that it's the same with language learning.
Yeah.
So if we're just trying to say things and trying and we're making mistakes, they can be
Mm-hmm.
corrected,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Totally.
Through great exposure and
Yeah, I would agree. I did an Instagram video of my three kids with a pronunciation challenge of just saying
okay,
5 words. And of course, my 2 year old and even my 4 year old, she did not have a good pronunciation. But then my 7 year old, he was pretty much perfect. So I was like,
nice.
you guys, in 7 years, you can be perfect. There's hope. There's hope.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does take some time. It takes some practice. What platforms do you use to meet native speakers?
Well, I used to I used what was the name? It was mylanguageexchange.com. I used it
Okay.
quite a bit in the past, but the interesting thing now is just because of the fact that I have more followers on Instagram,
Yeah. You have a
or
big
am I
channel. So
frozen?
No, you're not. You're
Can you guys hear
great,
me?
floating around, hanging out. Yeah, you're
Internet,
good.
okay.
Can you hear me?
Did I freeze?
No,
Am I
you
back?
never did.
No. Oh,
You're,
because you
yeah.
froze for me, so I thought like, oh, I must be frozen.
No, you're just hanging out,
I'm
moving
just hanging
around.
out. Good,
Yeah.
good, good. I'll just keep going next time. But anyway,
Yes.
so, oh my God, what was the question again? I keep getting
Oh,
distracted when
what
that
was
happens.
it? Oh, you were talking about how you have a bigger following. So now
Oh yeah, yeah,
you don't
true.
even
So
need to find people. Everyone just
they
reaches
come to
out to
me. Yeah.
you.
Yeah, so I guess like normally I just get a. So for instance, if I post one story about, oh,
Yeah.
I'm learning Finnish, normally I've got like 3 messages or 5 messages. Oh, like
Yeah.
hi, like I speak Finnish. Do you want to practice or whatever?
That's
Like so.
awesome. I
So
love
it's
that.
kind of fun.
That's amazing. Okay, what inspired you to start your channel? I mean, you've been creating content for a long time.
Yeah, I started taking it more seriously in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, it was just joking around, to be honest.
Okay.
I just had
Okay.
other ambitions. I was just,
Yeah.
but in 2017, I was just like, "Yeah, you know what? Like, no, I'm gonna do this.
Uh-huh.
It's gonna be fun."
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, and what drove me to do it is just the fact that I realized that I could inspire people
Mm-hmm.
and help them. Especially
Yeah.
because I think that a lot of people struggle so much
Mm-hmm.
with learning languages. And something that I find really interesting, and I've been mentioning this recently just because I
Yeah.
find it such an interesting phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this.
Mm-hmm.
I've come across, have you used the app Clubhouse before?
Yes. That's how I
Yes?
found you,
Oh, yeah, that's
Gabrielle.
true. Oh my God, I'm going crazy. Anyway, so I've come across a lot of. How can I forget? I'm crazy because we communicate through Instagram, so just thought
Yes.
that like.
Yeah, yeah. Because
Anyway, and now I remember.
I initially reached out to you on Instagram, but it was after I found you on Clubhouse.
Aha,
Yes.
there we go.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
Clubhouse is an audio app for whoever doesn't know it,
Mm-hmm.
and you just have chats with people in these rooms that are defined by whatever topics you choose to
Mm-hmm.
um, talk about or whatever. So, and I've come across a lot of Brazilian English teachers,
Mm-hmm.
and I find it so interesting that a lot of them, even though they've been teaching for decades,
Yeah.
they still have a very low level of English.
Okay. Very
So like,
interesting.
sometimes they're at B1 or A2,
Whoa.
and it's just like and
Yeah.
they're making mistakes. They have like a really thick accent, and
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, they can still be good teachers,
Yeah.
but they have limited tools.
Mm-hmm.
And if the
Yeah.
student is at a higher level, they're gonna need someone else, and
Yeah.
there's just no way around that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So then it came to my attention that like a lot of people just don't seem to evolve like that quickly, or
Mm.
they just
Yeah.
is it that they're not putting enough effort into it? Is it just the fact that they they feel satisfied when they reach a certain level? If they reach
Mm-hmm.
B1, they're like, okay, I'm good enough. Like I'm
Yeah.
just gonna teach
Yeah.
now. I'm just not gonna learn any further. Or is
Mm-hmm.
it really, a strange sense of pride that like really
Mm-hmm.
prevents us from moving forward? So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't. I stay humble with the languages. I'm just like, oh, I'm never like, okay, I've mastered this to the point that I'm
Yeah.
never gonna touch it again. There's
Yeah.
there's just no such thing. I'm always
Yeah.
trying to. You need to
No.
evolve constantly.
Yeah. Totally. Totally. Because yeah, I lost my train of thought there for a second, but I was gonna say, I know. This live, you guys. Distractions. No, but you're right. Like we always keep evolving. We never arrive to where we're perfect in the language. And we
Yeah,
can forget. Like if you don't practice it, I've experienced this personally. I started to forget Spanish when I started learning Italian, and I realized, whoa, I got to go back at the same time that I was starting to brush up on my Spanish when learning Italian. You have to keep practicing the languages, or yeah, you won't evolve, or you could even lose it.
yeah, absolutely. And I think that for when between Spanish and Italian, that was an interesting experience for me as well because when I was learning Italian,
Mm-hmm.
I kept mixing it up with Spanish until, and it took me a while not to
Yeah.
do so. And I
Yeah.
still do a little bit. Sometimes, like
Mm-hmm.
I'll be speaking Italian, like a Spanish word will pop up, and I'll think it's Italian,
Yeah.
but it happens less often
Mm-hmm.
now, especially if I'm
Mm-hmm.
just like really more into Italian and
Yeah.
I'm reading more or whatever.
Yeah. Totally.
But and especially if I'm speaking with the hand like this, hey,
Yes.
Giacomo, basically that. Like, we'll have pizza later.
Andiamo.
Hey,
Marika, if she's still here, she's
perché
gonna be like,
no?
what are you guys doing?
But basically, I think that ultimately it's just when I reached a certain level, when I reached when I was at maybe B1, reaching B2 in Italian, then it started to really um, compartmentalize the more in my brain. So they were more
Yeah.
separate, but it took a
Mm-hmm.
while
Mm-hmm.
to
It
really get to that.
does. It does. People ask me that, especially my mom. She only speaks English, but she's always like, oh, I would just mess all those languages up. Like, how do you keep them straight, you know?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. I'm just changing the lighting here. It's
no,
just
it's
because it's
good. Oh, you look
dark.
very angelic
Now it's
now. Now
scary.
you look like you're
Yeah.
going to tell us a ghost story. We're
Yeah.
seeing many
There you go.
sides of Gabrielle in this
Yes.
life.
The sun has set in Paris right now.
Oh,
So.
wow. And I am in my garage, so I don't see any light. Yes. You guys, I will get to your questions. So, okay, I have a few though that are just so interesting. Do you become a different person with each language that you speak? Like the Italian, for example. Like, do you
Yeah.
feel like braver, like you can be whoever you want to be in that language?
Uh, I think that I I'm pretty outgoing as is.
Yeah.
So I
Mm-hmm.
think that maybe for someone who's a bit shyer and more, introverted, when
Yeah.
they learn a different language that's more expansive, like Italian,
Mm-hmm.
I think they
Mm-hmm.
may feel more like that. I've had some friends in the polyglot community really say like how they feel like they have a different personality in the
Mm-hmm.
language and like
Mm-hmm.
in different languages or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't really feel that way. I think
Okay.
that I like to sometimes just almost as a joke, just sort of like incorporate a character in a different language. If I'm speaking Russian, just for instance, like I'll just be like, hey, как дела? Like I'll just like speak with a different voice or
Yes.
whatever, just for fun. But it's just
Yeah.
really for fun. But I
Okay.
don't feel like I'm a different person with the.
Yeah.
But I think that you think differently, and it
Yeah.
expands your mind because it's just
Totally.
a different way of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm still the same Gabriel, I think.
Right. Right. I love that you say your name American. Am I pronouncing it wrong when I say
No,
Gabrielle?
you can say Gabriel. Like I prefer.
Okay.
I like the French way too. Gabriel. It's just
Gabrielle. Yeah, that's
Gabriel,
cool.
just the archangel. So
Uh-huh.
whichever way works for me.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Yeah. So Mariko was saying the voices change. Oh, that's a good little question. Do you feel like you have a higher level of romance while speaking French?
Ah oui, c'est très romantique la langue française. Like,
Yes. So he said
what do you
yes
think?
because French is such a romantic language.
I think to some extent, like for instance, like I think that but I must say that for take German for instance, it's just
Mm-hmm.
obviously not considered a very romantic language,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like
Mm-hmm.
nobody's gonna say, oh, like German's just it strikes my heart when I hear German. But I but I think that it's just also interesting to sort of explore that in different
Yeah.
languages too, because German, to me, I find that it can be a romantic language too. Like
Really?
there can be, oh yes, there's for example like
Dish
there's certain
Liebedish.
singers,
Yes, that's all I
Was
know.
ist los hier? Schmetterling. Like it can be a more harsh sounding language or whatever,
Yeah.
but it can
Yeah.
also sound um, it can be an elegant language as well. So I find that like there are stereotypes, and inevitably I find
Mm-hmm.
like French is a beautiful language, Italian is a
Oh,
beautiful
so
beautiful language.
beautiful. Mm-hmm.
It can be very romantic, but I
Mm-hmm.
think that all languages can be romantic and
Yeah.
beautiful, and
Yeah.
they can.
What is
But
your
unless you're screaming German,
Oh,
then
yeah. Someone says, oh, you feel tired after speaking Japanese. They're fighting while speaking.
fair enough.
Oh, wow. Okay. So if somebody were to just tell you this, oh, Gabrielle, it's so easy for you to learn languages. How would you respond to them?
Well, first I'd say that as I mentioned, a lot of people don't. Um, some people are like skeptical when I say this. That they're like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, you're just being humble, or maybe you're just trying to sell courses." That's why I say you um, initially weren't good at learning languages. But that's truly how I felt.
Yeah.
I'm being honest.
Yeah.
I don't need to lie about it. If I felt like if I was like amazing from the get go, I would say so. It's just like I'm just great at learning language. No, it was
Yeah.
really challenging. It was really challenging
Yeah.
initially. I honestly thought I used to think that I was terrible at learning languages.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that I
Mm-hmm.
sucked at it. It was not my
Mm-hmm.
forte.
Yeah.
And that in my mind was just the reason why it took me so long to get really good at English or just get
Mm-hmm.
even decent at English. It took me a while.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
I so I'd say, it's and the word easy or
Yeah.
difficult in languages, like, no, they no longer make too much sense to me anyway. It's just kind of, it's
Mm.
basically, you need to put in the time. You need to
Yeah.
dedicate yourself. It's just about
Yeah.
dedication, but it's not
Yes.
difficult, like,
Yeah.
and it's not
Yeah.
easy either because
Yeah.
you gotta get
It's
into it. You gotta,
takes a lot of time. You're right. I
yeah,
personally, I
it's time
get,
consuming.
yeah, I get frustrated like when people are like, "Oh, Camille, like it's just so easy for you to learn languages." I'm like, "No, I am really struggling right now with learning French. My accent isn't very good. I'm having to put in hours of study. It is not easy." But the passion is there and the motivation is there. So I think those things make a big difference, right?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Do you get into do you have like certain do you have any perhaps um, series or movies or cultural elements of the French that you have fallen in love with, that you're really into, that you get exposure to, or
There's been two YouTube channels that I really like. One is called Perfect French with Dylan, and the other is called Piece of French. And so I watch all of their videos. I like them. So,
nice?
yeah. But as far as series, it still feels over my head. I'll turn it on and I'll be like, what is going on? It's still frustrating for me. So I'm 7 months into my French journey.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I'm
Nice.
like, I'll get
But
there. I'll get there.
good. But since you already speak Spanish and Italian
Mm-hmm.
and Portuguese,
Yes.
it will be easier just because of the fact that you do have, how the grammar works like there are a lot of elements that
Similar.
are pretty similar,
Mm-hmm.
verb
Mm-hmm.
conjugations,
Yeah.
pronouns, so on, even
Yeah.
expressions and
Mm-hmm.
vocab.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of overlap. So I guess
Yeah.
that you're going to find it relatively easy compared to just
Yeah.
when you started learning Spanish or
Exactly. That's true.
right.
The first language I tell people is always the hardest because you don't know how to learn a language.
Mhm.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just going to scroll back up. This was a funny comment that somebody made. Clayton, have you ever created a new word when you didn't know the right word to use?
Yeah, I think that it's something that happens, right? Like
Yeah,
if you
totally. I have.
like you're just saying like especially like now for instance in French sometimes they're just like the word in French won't come to mind.
Yeah.
I'll just pick an English word and try to fit it in somehow.
Yeah, you
And
Frenchicize
something
it.
really interesting is that Frenchicize it,
I just
and
made
that's
that up, you
that.
guys. I just made up a word.
Very good. Well done. Frenchicize the
Thank
word.
you.
Excellent. But something interesting is, for instance, that my favorite Russian poet, or my favorite poet overall, in fact, is Russian. His name is
Mm-hmm.
Alexander Pushkin, and basically, because he mastered French,
Mm-hmm.
also, what he
Mm-hmm.
did is that he actually introduced a lot of French words into Russian, and they're still used nowadays.
Okay. So
Just
interesting.
because, yeah, and Shakespeare did the same with English. He
Yeah.
just created a bunch of words.
Mm-hmm.
Some came from French, some just he made them up, which
Yeah.
and many of them are still used nowadays. I can't think of any examples. I read them somewhere sometime. I saw an
Wow.
article, but
Yeah.
it's
This,
but it happens, and
yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think of even like now with the slang in English, it's being added to the Urban Dictionary. People are actually using these words, and understanding each other and communicating. So it is an interesting thought.
Yeah, the new slang is always being like. I think that, for instance, when I with my best friend, he's a lawyer in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
We we had our own sort of vocab that we created. Like because you're just like in you talk so often that you just like you create like expressions
Mm-hmm.
or you make little jokes or references and stuff, and you just create your own language in a way sometimes with
Yeah.
certain
Yeah.
words or expressions and so on. So and sometimes they get into the mainstream and become slang,
Yeah.
like you mentioned, right? Like for a big group of people.
Yeah. It's
So
so
that's
interesting.
interesting.
Yeah, totally. Okay, there was one other thing and then I always have more and more questions in my mind because it's so interesting. Okay, so it was talking, let me see if I can find it. You also have a proposal if you decide to learn Arabic. There's somebody here that offered their help, Harun.
Excellent. I think it was Harun.
Yes, Harun, yes. Oh, and it's also his question. Could you advise advanced learners what to do and how to evaluate progress? Because it's a slow progress when you're at advanced levels and it sometimes can be frustrating. I can just put the
Yeah, I
question
would
up there.
say, I think that it's important that to to remember that we're always once we have exposure, especially to like at a high level, if you're already C1, C2 in the language and you're just going further and further, every time you get exposure, you're getting progress.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Um, but it's going to be hard to really like to be able to see that and measure that, just
yeah.
because of the fact that like you maybe you just acquired 5, 10 new words or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I would say first of all, like don't worry so much about it, and just
Yeah,
like keep like just if you want progress, just keep going for it. Just like
yeah.
really get a ton of
Mm-hmm.
exposure
Mm-hmm.
to challenging content
Yes.
that is just like very like rich in vocab and so on,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and keep going for it. And I think that there are some tools that you can use, like for to sort of figure out what your level of vocab is and so on. But
Mm-hmm.
personally,
Mm-hmm.
I don't really worry about it.
Yeah.
I think that especially when we're at a high level in the language, I think that we just
Yeah.
need to keep pushing it if we so desire to do.
Mm-hmm.
If we
Mm-hmm.
really want to keep going with the language.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, keep
Mm-hmm.
pushing it
Yes. Keep going forward. That's good.
because you are having progress regardless.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Sometimes it's hard to measure your progress or see it, but if you keep studying every day, you're making progress. Absolutely.
Definitely.
That's good. Do you personally feel pressure to learn a language maybe quicker or how much time do you give yourself?
No, I feel no pressure. It's just
Okay.
because I think that uh, I have a lot of confidence
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing, and
Yeah.
because so I think that it's just and I understand the process,
Mm-hmm.
and as a
Mm-hmm.
result, I just have no pressure. I just know that
Yeah.
progress will come with my level of exposure, my level of effort, my level of
Yes.
passion. Those are
Yes.
the things that the progress depends on, and so I don't really just
Mm-hmm.
I think that
Mm-hmm.
like for instance, and it's also I think a mistake to do so, to just
Mm,
put a lot of pressure on yourself and just like really
yeah.
be like, oh hey, I need to get to this level, or I need
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
do this or do that, or and
Yeah.
it's great to have the ambition and push yourself. Of course, that's
Mm-hmm.
great, and you should
Mm-hmm.
do it,
Mm-hmm.
but it should be fun,
Yeah.
and
Totally. Totally.
Nietzsche said that basically one of my favorite books is Also sprach Zarathustra, or So Thus Spake Zarathustra, and
Okay.
basically he talks about the gravity
Mm-hmm.
being this the spirit of gravity is like the devil for him.
Mm.
So, and everything that weighs you down and just basically everything that is heavy
Yeah.
isn't good. So there's got
Mm-hmm.
to be an element of lightness
Mm. Yeah.
to things for them to be good, essentially. And in
Yeah.
language learning, that is so important.
Mm-hmm.
Basically,
Mm-hmm.
you gotta enjoy it. There's gotta be
Yeah.
lightness. There's gotta be fun. It's gotta be fun.
Yeah.
And if you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself, you're just not having that fun.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna
Totally.
stress. And
Totally.
so, do you know Stephen Krashton?
Yes, I've also
He's
heard
a
of
big
from
name.
Italiano Automatico. I've learned about him.
Ah,
Yes, because
excellent.
he always talks about his method. Yes.
Mhm. Yes,
Yes.
and he talks about the effective filter,
Mm-hmm.
which is basically if you have a lot of anxiety when you're learning a language,
Mm-hmm.
what's going to happen is that you're getting content and it's not getting through because the filter is
Mm.
blocking it
Oh my
when you're
gosh.
very anxious.
You guys, this is such good stuff. Okay, talk a little bit more. Is there more to say than that?
So basically, so that's
That's
why I
so good.
find that you know that relates in my eyes to
Yeah.
the words of Nietzsche. You have to have
Mm-hmm.
this lightness when you're
Yeah.
learning a new language. It's got to be fun.
Mm-hmm.
You have to abandon the anxiety because when you
Mm-hmm.
do so, and that's one of the reasons why I like to use Duolingo. Like, it's just a
Mm-hmm.
fun little app.
Yeah.
It's a little
Yeah.
it's game of like some people like to hate on it. I don't get it. It's just because I guess they feel threatened because they're like, oh, everyone's gonna go for Duolingo, which is free, and not take my course. I don't get it still
Yeah.
because I think that
I mean, I
there can be
use
both.
it.
You know.
I
So
have an
yeah.
over 1,000 day streak on it. I'm very proud of that
Wow.
streak. I'll keep
Nice.
going for it. Thank you.
I'm
Thank you very much. I mean,
I'm
I
I'm
yeah, I mean, and there are some like stupid things like vocab stuff, in the beginning, like the animals, we talked about that,
Yeah.
or there's like sentences that you're like, I would never say that.
Yeah.
But
Then don't focus on it.
overall, yeah,
Yeah,
overall
that's the
I
thing.
think
Yeah.
it's a great app. I think it can really help
Totally. Yeah. Like
aid
there's
aid.
some,
Mm-hmm.
like I said, when there's silly stuff
Mm-hmm.
or vocab that I know is just like low frequency,
Yeah.
I finish it, then I just don't come back to it. Then I
Mm-hmm.
don't focus on it.
Yeah.
Right. So, but when there's so many sentences that I say, okay, this is an important sentence. I like the structure of the sentence.
Mm-hmm.
There are words
Mm-hmm.
here that I want to learn.
Yeah.
So then I just I review that stuff later. So I
Mm-hmm.
just put it on Anki or just like I write it down so I can
Mm-hmm.
just like
Mm-hmm.
really review it.
That's so
So
good. That's
it's
so good.
yeah, and no anxiety.
Yeah.
No anxiety.
Well, how do you like protect yourself because you're in the public eye? So many people look up to you as one of like the polyglots that they aspire to be, really. And so how do you keep from like feeling pressure from your community, your fans, people that really look up to you?
I think that's sweet of you to say. Um, Well, I think that I don't want to sound arrogant because I really am not. I
Yeah.
think I have so much to learn in every language that I speak.
Yeah.
I know that, but
Mm-hmm.
I also I'm very confident in who I've become, and I think
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
I'm at a very high level in many languages, so I think that I have nothing to prove.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
know,
That's
so
good. That's really good. Yeah. Simple answer.
simple
Okay,
answer.
so somebody, hey, you guys, if you're coming in maybe mid live and this is getting towards the end of our live, and so somebody did ask you what languages you're studying, which if, I don't know if you just want to quickly say again, and then also, are you fluent in Portuguese? Because most Brazilians like me are not.
I'm sure Pedro is fluent in Portuguese. I am fluent, but it's hilarious how just like I'll just whenever I speak with Steve Kaufman, for instance, he
Hmm.
teaches me a new Portuguese word.
No.
That it's hilarious. Like, and sometimes something funny too is just, for instance, um, the word exprimir,
Hmm.
and normally I use it in Spanish, and I knew it, like to express yourself.
Yeah.
But I was not at one point. I was just not aware that there is such a word also in Portuguese, and that it means the same thing.
Okay. Well, how do you
So
pronounce it in Portuguese?
exprimir.
Okay, exprimir.
It's
Mm-hmm.
but normally, just because in Portuguese, I normally use the word expressar to express
Oh,
myself,
yes, exactly.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
basically, so there's just of course, like I'm C2 in Portuguese, but
Mm-hmm.
like I mentioned earlier, I'm just more comfortable, and I believe I can express myself more elegantly in
Yeah.
English than Portuguese, just because I
Mm-hmm.
don't read as much in Portuguese
Mm-hmm.
and I
Mm-hmm.
don't use it as much.
Totally. Yeah.
But
And you're studying the
still
main
fluent.
language you're focused on right now though is Japanese, right? He had also asked that question. I don't think he heard at the
It
beginning.
is and it isn't. Just because I'm doing the
Okay.
challenge, and
Mm-hmm.
I tend to continue with Japanese for
Mm-hmm.
years to come after the challenge.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
I'm um, I'm also very focused on. Actually, I want to go back to Polish, and I want to get
Okay.
to
Yeah.
B2 in Polish. I'm
Mm-hmm.
probably A2
Mm-hmm.
right now. So
Mm-hmm.
first I want to reach B1 and then B2. Um,
Yes.
but I think I'll do it relatively quickly, just because
Mm-hmm.
I'm into it, and it's also
Mm-hmm.
my knowledge of Russian will help
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
to some extent, not that much, because it's just it's
Yeah.
still there's a lot of new stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
so I want to learn Polish as well, and I've been putting a lot of effort into the languages that I already know, but I want to get
Yeah.
to, for instance, like a C1 level or
Mm-hmm.
equivalent level in
Mm-hmm.
Russian and Mandarin. I don't.
Mm-hmm.
I, I'm still probably far away. I'm probably just at B2 at
Yeah.
both of them. So still a lot of work to
Mm-hmm.
do in all of the languages,
Mm-hmm. Yes, always,
without
right?
neglecting German and Italian
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and
That's the
Dutch.
thing.
That I like
Yeah.
Dutch.
That's the thing. You always have to maintain the languages or maintain, lose, or get better in them, right?
True,
Those are
it's
the
just a
only.
juggling act. Always juggling.
Yes. Yes. Okay, so I don't like to keep my lives usually more than an hour, but I want to ask you this one question. What would you tell your younger self if you could give your younger self any piece of advice? 10-year-old, 15-year-old Gabrielle, what would you tell yourself?
I would say less anxiety. Just
Mm,
learn as many languages as you can, as aggressively as you can, buddy,
yeah.
and just keep going.
Yeah.
Because if I know everything that I know now
Yeah.
about learning languages, of course, without knowing the languages, but
Mm-hmm.
about knowing languages, I think that by now I'd probably be fluent in 15, maybe,
Wow.
had I known. But
Yeah.
like it's just kind of like an interesting
Mm-hmm.
balance as well, because I've come this far in English because of the effort that I've put into it
Mm-hmm.
as well, right? So like I
Mm-hmm.
guess
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just it's all relative. But
Totally.
I would say
Totally.
yeah, keep doing what you're doing, be confident, and
Yeah.
don't stress, but pursue
Mm-hmm.
the languages
Mm-hmm.
and pursue your passions.
That's good. That's good. Do you have other passions? I know you had mentioned like karate that you did as a boy and things like that. What
Yeah,
would
I
be
have a few. Well,
okay?
like one of them is really just teaching, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
I love to teach, and I love to just I love connecting with people. That's
Yeah.
just one thing that really drove me to
Mm-hmm.
learn
Mm-hmm.
all the languages. So just like love meeting new people, just
Yeah.
chatting with people, and so on.
Yeah.
And like I mentioned, I love literature. I love traveling.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
love music as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, More listening than singing or playing instruments. But
What? You're not
sometimes
gonna
I
sing a song right now?
do re ador angarde.
That's wonderful. Oh my
Oh,
goodness.
yes, yes. I'm a
Yes.
bass baritone, but I've never done it
Wow.
professionally or anything.
That was so
Far from it.
cool. I didn't expect that really.
That's
I can never sing in public. Oh my goodness.
oh, I see.
Yes. So they just did it.
Yeah,
I'm
but
like,
yeah, basically, like
wow.
I got a somewhat. I have a because I'm a bass baritone and I have like a low voice. I
Yeah.
do enjoy basically like singing anthems, for instance, like
Yes.
Allons avant de la patrie, le jour de gloire
Wow.
est arrivé.
That's
I do enjoy.
awesome. That's amazing. Wow. So cool.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Do you have any projects that you want to share that you're currently working on, or anything that you could just offer to people that are wanting to learn how to learn languages or wanting to learn English with you? How can they connect?
Oh, I see. Well, like, I'd say you guys can follow my Instagram or my YouTube. I'm normally publishing I make these things public
Mm-hmm.
normally,
Mm-hmm.
and right now I have like the Japanese challenge. I'm always doing different challenges
Your
for
one
people who want to
sentence
do the
challenge.
one sentence challenge exactly. So
Mm-hmm.
you can do just basically say a sentence, do a video saying a sentence in a language that you're learning or that you want to
Mm-hmm.
practice.
Mm-hmm.
And some if you don't want to share it with the world, don't keep it for yourself. It's also really good.
Yeah.
Like if you want to do that every day, it's amazing.
Yeah.
But a lot of people do post it on Instagram too, so
Mm-hmm.
you guys can do it too if you'd like.
Yeah, you guys should
Don't
do it. I should do
don't
it.
be
Oh
shy.
no, I'm
Yeah, you
shy.
should.
Do a sentence in French. I can do it.
Yes, pourquoi pas.
Yes. And so you're posting videos how frequently on your channel?
Normally I do once a week,
Mm-hmm.
but I may do. I'm considering doing maybe twice a week, depending
Okay.
on just because like there's just always a lot to talk about, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I also I like to try to keep the quality high. You know, like so
Yeah.
sometimes I just want to if I'm just posting whatever just to post, then
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, that can be compromised. So like normally I'd really like to just try to think about it and
Yeah.
do just once a week for now.
Do you do everything? Do you shoot your videos, edit them, post them, or do you have help with that?
Normally I just do it all myself, and it does make me go crazy almost.
Oh
Like
my gosh. That is
so I
wild.
put subtitles on them too. Like if it's conversations, and I have like I don't know, I have like maybe 17 conversations with people with strangers that I have
Yeah.
not edited yet because I need to put subtitles and stuff. But like
Oh,
you
the
know,
subtitling. I am
oh,
so
it's just a
thankful.
nightmare.
I do my English
Koshna.
subtitles, but I have friends that write them in other languages because I couldn't. It would be too much. It's very time consuming.
It is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
Wow.
should get people to do it too.
Yeah.
That'd be nice.
Well,
Hopefully for free. I'm kidding. It doesn't matter. I
yeah.
could pay them too.
You guys, if you want to write subtitles for Gabrielle, actually, it was a Turkish friend of mine that was like, if anyone want, I just mentioned it on a live with him. If anyone wants to write subtitles for me, and somebody's been writing Jelly my subtitles for my channel ever since. It's amazing.
Nice.
I
That's really cool.
know. I know. I know. It's incredible. Wow. So
So,
seriously, you should put a thing out on your just on your Instagram or YouTube or whatever and just put
yeah,
the word out there. I'm sure because people also like to do it to practice, like to practice the
true.
languages
Yeah.
as well. It's a good way. So the guy that writes my Portuguese subs, he's like, "No, it's such good practice to translate, English to Portuguese." So,
That's very clever. No, of course. I think I'll.
mhm.
But yeah, normally it would be a pain if I have whatever. If I in one single video, if I speak 7 languages, then
Yeah,
it's just gonna
then it
I'll have to
might
find
be on
someone who
your
speaks
own.
Dutch or whatever. Yeah, exactly. Then I'll just have to.
Yeah.
So it'd
Yeah.
be a bit of a nightmare.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
overall, yeah, I may do that in the future because that will
Yeah.
help.
Yes. Do you have any like overarching like 10-year goals or anything like that?
Uh, no, well, like I do want to learn. Like within like in 10 years from now, I want to be fluent in a few more languages, including
Yeah.
Japanese, Korean, Hebrew. I think that is a really cool
Wow.
language too.
Wow.
Swedish, Norwegian, Polish for sure, perhaps Czech. Like
Oh
so
my
that'd be
gosh.
nice to just like speak well like within 10 years.
Yeah.
But I also envision myself really basically having a bigger impact and reaching a larger
Mm-hmm.
audience too. Because like right now, recently I hit 250,000 subscribers on YouTube, but I got
That's
I think I got long
amazing.
I
Dude,
got long ways to go.
I just hit like the 2,500 mark recently. So
Nice.
poco a poco.
Poco
No,
poco.
yeah. No, I'm super grateful for this platform of YouTube because I wouldn't meet people like you, really.
True.
So
Yeah.
it's been amazing. It's been amazing. Wow. I really do wish you the best of luck with all of your projects, your
Likewise.
channel, your Instagram, all your language learning endeavors. I think it's amazing. I've had so much fun hanging out with you here today. Thank you so
Likewise. It's
much
been a great
again.
pleasure.
Yes, I don't know. Thank you guys, everyone that's here watching. I don't know if you want to give any last words, Gabrielle, anything you want to say or wrap up this live with.
I would say, basically the same. advice that I would give my younger self. Just like
Mm-hmm.
keep going for it. Like work hard, put in the time
Yeah.
without anxiety, and fall
Mm.
in love with the language.
Yeah.
You're gonna reach like great levels of progress if you do that.
That's so good. That's
Uh,
like my takeaway from this live is like, Camille, don't be anxious with French. Just enjoy it. You know?
yeah,
Really?
totally. And
Yeah.
forget the pressure. That's just
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
won't help.
That's so good. I have enjoyed this so much. I know I just said that, but I really have. It's been so fun just to hear your journey and hear your heart and your wisdom. And I just feel very, very inspired. So thank you again. Muito
You're very
obrigada.
welcome. It's been a blast.
Yes, yes. Okay, you guys, I'm going to end this live, but I will go ahead and save it. And we're also going to post. Gabriel has some videos in multiple languages, and so I'm just going to link those as well below. Be sure, you guys, to go subscribe to his channel, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, follow us on Instagram, and we will see you guys soon. Ciao, ciao.
Adios.